The altered scale, also known as diminished whole tone, is a widely used sonority in jazz improvisation, which provides a unique outness to the sound when applied over dominant seventh chords. Although technically the altered scale fits harmonically over a dominant seventh chord with a sharp 5 or a flat 5, in jazz it's used as commonplace over any dominant seventh chord that resolves up a fourth or down a fifth. With this in mind, the altered dominant scale proves to be a very versatile tool in your improvisational arsenal. So when learning any new scale or tonality, what I like to do is take it through a 6-step process in order to get from the point of just playing an exercise all the way up to creating art. So the first step is just to learn the scale up and down. That's really important, but many people just stop there. So I really urge you to take it beyond this point, or you're never going to learn how to use it. But this is the first stop. So when we take the altered scale, we want to learn it in 2 octaves. So it's going to go like this. So real important to understand the formula of this scale. We've got the root, we've got the flat 9, we go to the sharp 9, we go to the 3, we then go to the flat 5. We can also look at this as the tension sharp 11. We get the sharp 5, and we can look at this as also as tension flat 13, and then flat 7, and then we're back to the root. So as we go through this in 2 octaves, go through it in every key, make sure to really be listening to the sound and where the actual root of this chord is. This is extremely important. Now you go try it. Okay, so step 2 is learning to understand how the chords sound simultaneously on your bass guitar. Now we're kind of limited on a bass, but we can play some cool little 3-note voicings, and if we use combinations of 2 3-note voicings, we can really hear the sound of this altered dominant chord. So what I've got here is just the root and the 5th played. I want to just kind of mark that as my initial thing. Like a piano player would play in the left hand, maybe the root and the 5th, like a McCoy Tyner thing. And then in the next part, I'm going to play the sharp 9, the flat 13, and then the flat 9 in a voicing of fourths. So then I'm going to move that up where I'm going to the 3rd, and then the flat 7, and then the sharp 9 on the top. So I've got that sort of almost Jimi Hendrix chord on the top, but it's playing in there. And this gets us to start acclimatizing ourselves to the sound of the chord and hearing it on our own instrument. So I can play it like this. When I then have that sound in my head and I go to play the scale, my ears recognize the 2 sounds as matching, and I start to train my ear to really hear that density that exists within the altered scale. Okay, so the next step is breaking the scale up and learning it in what's called diatonic thirds. There's loads of different ways that you can do this. I'm just going to give you one idea today so we don't have too many options on the table right from the get-go. So if I play the scale in diatonic thirds, this is what I'm going to have. Notice that when I ascend up the scale, I'm playing the diatonic thirds ascending, And notice when I come back down the scale, I play them descending. This starts to get me to see the scale in a little bit of a broken fashion, and I'm also still maintaining that sound, that characteristic sound of the altered scale in my head. There's one point that a lot of people bring up, and I've probably mentioned it myself to people in the past, is where if I was playing this over a C7 chord, that the altered scale is actually a mode of the melodic minor scale. So it's the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale. So when you play a C altered scale, you're really playing the same notes in the D flat melodic minor scale. The problem though with that, especially in the beginning, is that it's hard to relate it back to that dominant chord that you're playing over. Because you've got to really understand when you're playing these things what's actually going on with you playing over that chord. So it's very important that as I'm playing this, that I'm actually thinking C7. So it's very important that I'm actually really understanding that from the vantage point of being the 7th mode from the melodic minor scale, the altered dominant scale, or sometimes referred to as diminished whole tone. Okay, now you practice. The next step that we're going to take a look at is learning the scale in alternating triads. Again, there's lots of different ways you can do this, but the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to send up one triad and then descend back down the second one. So it's like an ascending, descending formula all the way up to the top of the scale. So this is going to sound like this. Now, when we look at the actual qualities of each one of these triads, it's really important that you know what you're playing. So here we've got a C diminished, and then I come back down a D flat minor. Then I go up an E flat minor, and then I'm coming back down an E augmented chord, then up an F sharp major, then down an A flat major, and then up a B flat diminished, and then back down the C diminished. So when I put that all together in the drill, at the very end I kind of come back down just to kind of make it sound a little bit more musical, and it just gives me that kind of scale tone back into that C. You know, with a lot of this stuff, what I like to try to do from the very beginning is make just this sort of isolated exercise have some kind of musical merit. So notice when I play it, it's like this. And it really kind of has a really cool musical impact, and it's all you're playing is alternating triads. So that can take you a long way, but stay with me because nearer to the end, we're going to take it all the way up to where we're mixing all these ideas. There's so many more pattern type exercises that you could apply to this scale, but what I found is that these concepts are really the best starting points to really get the sound of the scale into your ears really quickly. The next step is to start working on transforming these patterns into more recognizable melodic statements. This is the key. The fastest way to do this is by randomly altering the rhythm rather than just playing a constant stream of notes. So for an example, I've taken 4 bars of eighth notes, and what I want you to do at home if you're following along with this is write this down on a piece of paper and write out 4 bars of eighth notes, and then number each one of the notes from 1 to 8 in each bar, and then just randomly select the numbers that you don't want, and then rewrite your exercise, your 4-bar pattern, to where you can see it with notes and rests. You can even use some ties in there if you want. Use your ears as a final judge at the end, But doing this randomly, you can just end up with some cool ideas that you wouldn't have normally thought about, which is really cool. So what I've done in this exercise is in the first bar, I've subtracted 2, 5, and 7, and then 1, 4, and 6 from bar 2, and then 7 in bar 3, and then 6 in bar 4. Now what I'm doing is swinging this, because I'm going to play this over a jazz groove, but you can do this either straight or swung. So if we take the final thing that I came up with, it's going to be like this: 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. So again, notice that I'm swinging these. If I played these straight, it's going to be like 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and. So play around with this idea. This is a very cool thing to start putting different rhythmic patterns together that you wouldn't normally come up with, and it's a really effective way of getting your phrasing together. So in this last step, we're going to put it all together by adding elements of the individual exercises into this specific rhythm pattern. This is a great example of how we can transform scales into viable melodic statements. So notice in bars 1 and 2, I'm just using the scale up and down. But notice the effectiveness of this is provided by the broken rhythm within those 2 bars. So it goes like this: 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and. Now in bar 3, I'm taking the diatonic thirds and playing a melodic fragment using that. And then in bar 4, I'm going to play a collection of the triads, and this is going to be picked up from the end, the last 8th note in bar 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what I want you to do is check this out in context to how quickly this whole process will take you from exercise to art. Remember that when learning any new sound, a process must take place where you're internalizing this into your musical memory. Within that process, there has to be what I call a transference of knowledge from exercise to art. I have a whole library of books that will get you up to speed on this concept, so make sure that you just click over here and check them out if you already haven't done so. Please remember to like and subscribe, and even better, share this video with your friends. That way YouTube will think I'm awesome. And if you subscribe, make sure to click on the notifications bell. That way, every time I release a new video, you'll immediately be notified. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.